Reacher Season 3's premise means the Prime Video series can finally honor Lee Child's Reacher Said Nothing rule. Reacher Season 3 gives Alan Ritchson's character from the Prime Video adaptation of Lee Child's Jack Reacher books another chance to say nothing. As well as his towering build and knack for killing, the Reacher novel character is also famous for his stony silence, to the point where Reacher Said Nothing has become a key tenet of the series. The protagonist's ongoing dislike for verbal communication contributes greatly to his aura and persona, amplifying both his physical abilities and his tendency to always walk alone. Currently in production ahead of release in 2025, Reacher Season 3 will be based on the 2003 book Persuader. Following Reacher as he gets revenge for a deceased ex-colleague, adapting Persuader is hardly reinventing the wheel for Prime Video's TV show, especially after Reacher Season 2 ended in similar fashion. With that said, pulling this particular book down from Lee Child's extensive shelf does give Alan Ritchson an opportunity to draw closer to the Reacher Said Nothing persona, without totally altering his character. In Lee Child's Persuader book, Reacher sets his sights on Francis Xavier Quinn by infiltrating an operation led by the villain's subordinate, Zachary Beck. Reacher does this by effectively going undercover, pretending to serve as one of Beck's trusted bodyguards, while secretly helping to bust open Quinn's entire arms dealing business. That story allows Alan Ritchson to play an entirely different spin on Reacher. Like any character going undercover among the bad guys, it's simply not possible for Reacher to act as he normally would around friends. For the purposes of his new persona, Reacher could reinvent himself as an even more withdrawn and introverted individual who truly embodies the Reacher Said Nothing philosophy. More pertinently, it would serve Reacher to be even less chatty than normal during Season 3's mission. Reacher must avoid giving himself away, attracting attention, or drawing any suspicion. The less he opens his mouth, the more likely he'll succeed, meaning Reacher Said Nothing would actually be a smart strategy. Staying silent would also help Reacher sell himself as a cold and calculated criminal, as opposed to just cold and calculated. In many ways, silence speaks volumes, especially when it comes to a character like Jack Reacher. The towering protagonist of Reacher, based on Lee Child's best-selling novels, is known for his stoic demeanor and economy of words. But with the potential direction of Reacher Season 3, embracing Reacher's silence even more, allowing him to say nothing, or less than before, could be a storytelling masterstroke, raising the stakes and heightening the tension in the narrative. To understand how Reacher's silence could elevate the stakes in Season 3, it's important to recognize what silence symbolizes in cinema and television. It's more than the absence of dialogue. Silence creates an atmosphere, an emotional tone that speaks directly to the audience. It's the unsaid words, the quiet moments where tension builds, and the viewer is left waiting for a shoe to drop. Reacher's character, a man who often lets his actions speak louder than words, is the perfect vehicle for this technique. In Reacher, his silence can be used as a weapon, a method to convey control, strength, or even danger. In Season 1, we were introduced to Reacher's physical prowess and sharp intellect. He dominated conversations by saying only what needed to be said. His reticence was a part of his mystique, but there were moments when Reacher spoke more than he had to. In Season 2, fans became more accustomed to his succinctness. But if Season 3 were to focus even more on his quiet strength, it would take the tension to another level. Reacher's silence could heighten suspense, not only in combat situations but in his interactions with other characters. It could make his enemies more anxious, his allies more curious, and the audience more engaged. A key aspect of Reacher's silence is its impact on his antagonists. There's a psychological edge to someone who doesn't speak when expected. In any confrontation, words are often used as weapons, threats are made, taunts are thrown, and the stakes of the conflict are verbalized. But imagine a scenario where Reacher faces down a group of adversaries, and instead of delivering a one-liner or responding to threats, he simply stares, waiting. The tension would rise exponentially. His silence would be unnerving, giving his enemies nothing to latch onto, no insight into his thoughts or next move. It's a tactic that could make even the most confident villain second-guess their approach. In fact, silence can be a form of psychological warfare. Reacher, a former military police officer, is well-versed in reading people and assessing situations. By speaking less, he forces others to reveal more about themselves. They fill the void, over-explaining, overreacting, or misjudging the situation, while Reacher remains in control. This psychological chess game could be a compelling addition to Season 3, especially in high-stakes scenarios where Reacher's composure and restraint put him at an advantage over those who rely on intimidation or manipulation. Furthermore, Reacher's silence could serve as a narrative tool to deepen his relationships with other characters. Often, protagonists in action-driven series are expected to engage in witty banter or emotional exchanges, but Reacher's minimalism in communication could actually enrich his connections with others. For instance, a scene where Reacher shares a moment of silence with a close ally could be more profound than any dialogue exchange. The unspoken understanding between them would speak to the depth of their bond. Likewise, when paired with a new character who tries to decipher him, Reacher's silence could become a source of intrigue, as they are left wondering what's going on inside his head. From a storytelling perspective, reducing Reacher's verbal interactions would also force the narrative to rely more on visual storytelling. Subtle facial expressions, body language, and the environment would carry more weight in conveying emotions and motivations. This shift could push the show's creative team to explore new ways of expressing Reacher's internal world, making the audience more attuned to every gesture, glance, and movement. A silent Reacher walking into a room could become as iconic as any dialogue-laden scene, simply because of the tension and anticipation it generates. Additionally, silence limits Reacher's status as an outsider. In both the novels and the show, Reacher is a drifter, someone who doesn't belong to any particular place or group. His silence could reinforce this sense of isolation. By speaking less, Reacher would appear even more detached from the social structures around him. This could create a compelling dynamic where other characters constantly try to engage him, pull him into their world, while he remains distant, reinforcing his enigmatic persona. In conclusion, Reacher saying nothing or less in Reacher Season 3 could dramatically raise the stakes of the story. His silence would heighten tension, create psychological warfare, deepen relationships, and emphasize his role as an outsider. It's a powerful storytelling tool that could transform the show's atmosphere, pushing the narrative into more suspenseful and intense territory. In a world where words are often overused, sometimes silence can be the loudest statement of all. For a character like Reacher, less really can be more. In many ways, silence speaks volumes, especially when it comes to a character like Jack Reacher. The towering protagonist of Reacher, based on Lee Child's best-selling novels, is known for his stoic demeanor and economy of words. But with the potential direction of Reacher Season 3 embracing Reacher's silence even more, allowing him to say nothing or less than before, could be a storytelling masterstroke, raising the stakes and heightening the tension in the narrative. To understand how Reacher's silence could elevate the stakes in Season 3, it's important to recognize what silence symbolizes in cinema and television. It's more than the absence of dialogue. Silence creates an atmosphere, an emotional tone that speaks directly to the audience. It's the unsaid words, the quiet moments where tension builds, and the viewer is left waiting for a shoe to drop. Reacher's in many ways, silence speaks volumes, especially when it comes to a character like Jack Reacher. The towering protagonist of Reacher, based on Lee Child's best-selling novels,